When someone starts talking about Great War, be cautioned because unfortunately they often mention Battlefield 1. And that's a little bit like saying, yeah, I love Italian food, and that person makes you Hawaii pizza from their fridge. Battlefield 1 players don't have a single clue why is Isonzo so immersive on a level that I have PTSD every time I hear a machine gun. Because this might very well be, of course along with Verden and Tannenberg, the most amazing Great War experience that you can get in a video game. Your fighting takes places in nature that you will think it's made up by developers to make the game more interesting, but it's also the magic of Italian and Austrian Alps. The lore you get with every map you play is actually telling you that the battle that you're replicating on your server is real because it actually happened on the exact place. From combats taking places in Rocky Mountains and beautiful Italian Alps where you would expect going on a holiday and not fighting in the biggest war in history, to completely overwhelming city combat reminding me why do I play 2A titles rather than do I have to talk about Battlefield again? And I like that attention of details by devs, they're giving you enough time to read it. This game excels the most in forcing you to play more tactical and not getting your position too valuable. You are not supposed to run over the map randomly. Letting the enemy team your location sooner or later gonna cost your life, even you're attacking or defending. But the more you play Isonzo, and it doesn't really matter on what maps you're playing, you realize that you don't have to just learn and get used to the rifle and its reloading. But every map requires some sort of a sniper movement if you want to survive longer than 10 seconds, because movement is slow, but it doesn't necessarily mean boring or irritating. You have to be aware of your location and have knowledge of that map and where are enemy players coming. Try to kill someone and then change your position at least slightly. And that's not a feeling you will get pretty much anywhere else, because when you miss with your rifle the first round, that I'm not saying you're completely fucked if you have cover, but if you're advancing someone, yeah, you're fucked. It always takes about a second to reload that could be crucial in making it through, and I love these moments so much. That seconds when you have to reload and you're just praying the other guy's gonna miss also, and actually he missed, so you have a second chance to kill him. Or you can get mad very quickly because the other person is hidden behind 3 obstacles 200 meters away from you with the only sniper rifle allowed on the map. And I almost forgot that there are certain classes in Isonzo because I simply fell in love with playing a totally classic rifleman. Just the most basic, ready to be killed person in that combat. And maybe someone is wondering, well, what is so satisfying about that? When you start on a server, basically being rifleman means all classes. Of course, on a few annoying exceptions with machine guns or revolvers, but you're just a no one in a huge system, which in my view makes it very accurate. There's no characters with special abilities. Yeah, of course you can choose if you want to carry grenades or shovels or wire cutters, but in the end of the day, your character is just an ordinary soldier, and that's good for the balance of your combat, because let's be honest, machine guns are OP and they were rare in Isonzo combat back then, so it makes sense to limit them. You know, this genre did get fucked a lot in recent years with all of the perks and advantages, so no one could balance it properly, so it's just nice to play a multiplayer FPS where it works again. And I could totally hear people convincing me, well, but the gunplay sucks, reloading is too slow. Well, it is slow, but I would like to argue about maybe don't charge someone with a rifle when you have 2 rounds left. That's something I had to learn when I wanted to get better in Isonzo, throwing all of my habits from CODs to trash and then actually try to think about my movement. You know that is a long way for the next range, so you better check out the enemies, and after that you pray for your life, and then you will not see someone's head without a blue marker. And I'm actually surprised that there's not more memes about blue and brown uniforms in these games, because sometimes it's super confusing. You're used to that Austro-Hungarian soldiers are wearing blue while Italians have brown uniforms, but also Austro-Hungarian officers can also wear brown uniforms, so it makes that combat a bit confusing and you have to rely on that blue marker. But that's not a problem, because you know very quickly who's on which side, because most of the times you get oh, the blooming spawning. To be honest, this was the biggest throwback for me in the first 10 hours of this game, but with the time I had to admit that it's actually a pretty clever system which has its advantages, especially if you know how to use your squad for helping yourself. Here's the situation, okay? When you're dying often, of course you then rely on a classic point A and point B spawn every I don't know how many seconds, but if your teammates have at least IQ of 70 and you're also not complete degenerate, then you actually make progress independently with your squad if you wait a little longer for your teammates to spawn, which this game is also rewarding you for. You can make sustainable progress through enemy lines, and with your squad you actually have a good chance of changing the game progress. And also because you have more people, for example, closer to the objective, so it makes other teammates spawning closer to you, so that system could be very beneficial if you know what you're doing. But the point I'm doing here is mainly hidden in score that you're getting when someone spawns to your location. This is obviously not the only example of getting additional points, but the game is able to reward you very cleverly cleverly for doing little things that if you can actually get used to them, then you can start helping your team a lot without doing too much work, and also you can see yourself in the absolute top of that ranking. It's not overdone complicated system that you have to pay a lot of attention to, but it gets with the flow of playing this game. And that is connecting to the reason why is Isonzo so immersive. The things that are happening on the server, including bombing, gas attacks, smoke grenades, long-range combat, and of course short-range combat. You've got the whole package of that every time you play Isonzo, because you spawn and you're overwhelmed by whistling officers screaming and encouraging you for combat. Then you can start to hear gunfire while you're charging the next objective with your fellow soldiers, and when all of that gets very intensive after 5 minutes, or you join some server a little bit late, then you can start to feel what I'm talking about here. Everything and everyone wanting to kill you, and that everything, I mean the whole environment, because you have to get used to the fact that you're gonna be bombed many times without seeing soldiers. You're gonna be killed by grenades or machine guns without noticing. But when you give it a couple of hours for properly mastering this game, then the flow of battles lasting an hour is the best in its genre. And I understand there is like serious authentic experiences in other video games, for example Hell Let Loose. And don't get me wrong, I think Hell Let Loose is great, probably gonna make video on that in the future, but it's just more hardcore on a level that it's not enjoyable for me as a peasant without the proper mood, or without that just the right mood that you're waiting for to play that hardcore video game. So the Isonzo does have a great balance of being hard for new players, but still very enjoyable and challenging for experienced players, while giving you great atmosphere of that Great War combat. So it maybe seems like this is a dream for Great War enjoyers around the world, which I'm totally understanding and agreeing with. But I didn't even start talking about soundtrack, and if you already seen my videos, you know how much I'm sometimes highlighting music in my reflections. But believe me, this is a different example. Making a soundtrack for AAA title is automatic. You know that you're gonna spend a lot of money on hiring some symphony if you want to be spectacular. In the end, the atmosphere of that particular game can rely on it a lot. But making 2A title with different symphony through the main menu, through the loading screen, through the combat itself, makes it standing out even more against its rivals. If honestly there is some. It's a classic situation that I can't play the music here for you without additional sounds, but holy shit, the soundtrack you get gets progressively more epic through your playthrough. And what I mean by that it does rely on what's happening on your server, so it creates more drama when you're attacking some objective, then it gets calmer when you accomplish that objective. Then it's again increasingly faster and more spectacular, but the important part of that it's dynamic the whole time. And sometimes it completely disappears for a while, but Minecraft has learned me one thing, and that is the music don't have to be necessarily constant, because sometimes that silence can also create the atmosphere. If you think about it, it kind of does make sense, because there are parts of that combat where you only get bombing and shooting sound, so it's obviously not silent, but it can get progressively more epic. But of course the life is not all rainbows, especially not 2A titles, and I have to admit there are certain things that, for example, Battlefield 1 does better. And I also don't want this video sounds too positive and not in a realistic manner, because Isonzo does have its problems. Most of its throwbacks also have Verden and Tannenberg, but in the bigger picture there are really mostly minor issues or more frustrating things, but I simply can't go over the fact that server takes century to load, and sometimes they even don't load at all. I absolutely get the fact that the servers are huge with a lot of people and the combat itself is also very long, sometimes more than an hour, so you're loading a lot of things, but come on, I have decent internet and loading screen can sometimes take 3 minutes, and even that it takes another 15 seconds to load all textures. And then you finally start to play and you realize that in the certain times there's a lot of AI soldiers, because there's not a lot of people playing in the morning or afternoon. If you want to have a really great combat with completely full server of people, you need to visit Isonzo in the evening when you can really choose what map you want to play with how many people. I mean, the AI itself is not bad and it has been improved a lot from the start, but of course it's just not gonna give you the same feeling when you kill AI rather than some other player. It's nice for statistics, but you know how it is, they're just slower and sometimes rushing things too much. And that gets me to the movement and animation itself. I'm standing by opinion that movement is slow in Isonzo, but not in an annoying way. But the animations are a bit... they're simply not motion capture, or at least they doesn't look like that. And that would be okay if goddammit my character would be able to reload when I'm not completely stationary. But even that it's still minor issue for me in the bigger picture. The Isonzo still stands for me as an etalon of Great War first-person shooters. And I know this is completely off topic, but in my opinion, even some single-player edition could be potentially great. Telling some story about specific soldier that has really fought there and making you more interested in that war, it would be so awesome. Of course, that's in the stars right now and it's probably never gonna happen, but even that, there's no denying this is still great first-person shooter that I think people should know more and they should more play it. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment, what do you think about this game, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!